In a small town where life flowed calmly and predictably, every evening resembled the one before. The twilight concealed not only the familiar streets, but also strange events that began with a mysterious meeting on the outskirts. That evening, 16-year-old Jacob, tired of his daily routine, decided to take a walk alone. His path led along an old trail to an abandoned field, where something incredible was hidden among the overgrown thickets. As soon as the sun dipped below the horizon, a bright light appeared in the sky, making Jacob stop in his tracks. He squinted, trying to figure out what it was. His eyes could not believe what they saw. The light darted from one end of the field to the other, as if dancing in the air. Before Jacob could even think about turning around and running away, something appeared before him, something that resembled a human, but had features that were impossible to describe in words. The creature seemed to have no aggressive intentions. It approached Jacob slowly, with an otherworldly grace. There was something soothing in its eyes, filling Jacob's soul with a strange sense of confidence. In the blink of an eye, the creature leaned toward him and, without a word, extended its hand. The touch was light yet mesmerizing. It was as if 1,000 images and sounds flashed through Jacob's mind, filling his consciousness with unknown knowledge. That encounter ended as suddenly as it had begun. The creature vanished into the night, leaving Jacob with the feeling that reality had changed forever. Even though he couldn't understand what had happened, his intuition told him that this encounter was no accident and that there was something more behind it than he could have imagined. When a barely perceptible echo drifted from the depths of the night, Jacob realized that this was only the beginning of an adventure that would turn his understanding of the world upside down. Immediately after the mysterious encounter, Jacob felt something strange stirring in his mind. The next morning, upon waking up, he noticed that he could see and understand things that had previously been completely incomprehensible to him. Mathematical formulas that had seemed like the most complex riddles now flashed through his mind like simple equations. Computer codes flowed through his mind like songs, sounding effortlessly and continuously. A strange energy, like an invisible hand, gently guided his thoughts, opening up new horizons. Jacob decided to test his abilities by sitting down at the computer. His fingers raced across the keys, creating programs that even seasoned professionals could not have developed. He soon realized that he could penetrate secure systems, solve the most complex algorithms, and invent technologies of the future. However, along with this gift came other, less pleasant changes. He began to hear a quiet hum in his head, which grew louder whenever he was near computers or other electronic devices. These changes frightened Jacob. He didn't know how to control them or where the limits of his new abilities ended. When he started telling his friends about it, they just laughed, thinking Jacob was either joking or reading too much science fiction. But he understood that this was no game. One day, he accidentally caused a malfunction in the school system, and this incident made him think about the consequences. Could his gift turn against him? The teenager began to realize that with this amazing knowledge came an unknown responsibility. From these events, Jacob gradually began to understand that his new abilities carried both incredible power and a threat. In every new task he solved, there was something more than just code or an algorithm hidden beneath the surface. He felt that this was only the beginning of a journey that could lead him to discoveries he had never even dreamed of. But what this path would be like and what he would have to learn about himself remained a mystery. Jacob entered the virtual world as if he were a fish in water. His abilities developed rapidly, and soon he was one step ahead of everyone else. At school, his classmates were amazed when he easily solved problems that even stumped the computer science teachers. It was as if his brain operated on a different frequency. He could see the logic and structure of programs that remained a complete mystery to others. But this was only the beginning. His talent did not go unnoticed. One of the teachers, who was also involved in software development, suggested that Jacob try his hand at a local startup. Jacob agreed, and within a few weeks he became a key developer on the team. He created algorithms that significantly simplified complex processes, causing quite a stir among his colleagues. Sometimes his solutions seemed so simple and obvious that many people couldn't believe in the genius of the young programmer. Jacob's popularity was growing not only in his own city. In the online community, his nickname became widely known, and programmers from all over the world tried to uncover the secret of his success. But neither courses nor books could explain the astonishing results of his work. Jacob himself understood that all of this was the result of that strange encounter which he preferred not to talk about. With each new project, he felt his skills becoming even sharper, but along with this, a sense of anxiety was also growing. Soon people began to see Jacob as a young genius, and he was invited to conferences and seminars to share his experience. In the world of programming, he became a real sensation, but he understood that with each new step, he would have to face greater challenges. As his name was becoming well known, Jacob began to wonder what that mysterious encounter had truly brought him and what role it would play in his future path. Jacob's new position in the programming world brought him not only success but also unexpected difficulties. His colleagues began to whisper behind his back, and some even openly envied his abilities. One day, during the demonstration of another project, he noticed that the atmosphere in the room had become tense, as if a string had been pulled tight. One of the developers, whom he had once considered a friend, suddenly claimed that Jacob was using dishonest methods. This accusation struck him like a bolt from the blue, making him wonder if his brilliance had become a threat to those around him. By the time Jacob managed to clear his name, it became clear to him that his gift was far from a harmless blessing. People began to treat him with suspicion, and even his achievements could not make up for the growing sense of alienation. He started to wonder whether his knowledge might be too heavy a burden for an ordinary life. Some of his former friends began to avoid him, fearing for their safety and even their careers, suspecting that Jacob might use his skills against them. His anxiety grew when, one evening, Jacob noticed that his computer had started to alter code on its own. It was as if his own mind had begun to play against him. He tried to fix the situation, but the more he tried, the more convinced he became that something had gone wrong. Jacob began to doubt that his abilities were under his control. Now he understood that his gift was not only a source of power, but also the cause of dangerous instability. But worst of all was that he had no idea how to explain what was happening. Reflecting on these changes, Jacob realized that his life would never be the same. He began to wonder what lay behind the apparent genius and whether there was something greater at work than he could possibly imagine. Now his future stood at a crossroads, and he was not sure he could withstand the trials ahead. Jacob had always been a skeptic, but after that encounter, many things no longer seemed impossible to him. His newfound knowledge in programming was so advanced that it seemed ripped straight from science fiction. Nevertheless, he realized that it was real and applicable here and now. His ability to navigate code with unprecedented speed and precision astonished even himself. He could spot errors and opportunities in systems that remained hidden to other specialists. Theories that he had gained access to something beyond earthly understanding began to seem not so unbelievable to him. Jacob realized that his ability to connect informational dots and solve problems that seemed unsolvable was not just a gift, it was a new reality. The information he absorbed stayed with him as if it had become part of his DNA. Even more astonishing was that Jacob began to create technologies that surpassed all existing developments. His software solutions made it possible to improve computer performance, unlock new levels of data processing, and even predict the future behavior of programs. This sparked a wave of interest from technology giants. But his realistic approaches and results left no room for skepticism. The world of programming began to change under his influence. People who had once considered his ideas crazy were now eager to acquire his knowledge and understand the source of his inspiration. However, Jacob understood that these abilities could also be a dangerous weapon. He realized that new knowledge required incredible caution in order not to harm himself or those around him. While some saw him as a future leader in the world of technology, Jacob knew he had to be careful, never forgetting the unexpected gift that had changed his life forever. But even despite all this, he could not predict what other surprises that meeting on the outskirts of the city would bring. Immersing himself in the virtual world, Jacob found something more than just an opportunity to create something new. It turned out to be a refuge where he could experiment and explore the limits of his remarkable abilities without worrying that someone would call them strange or dangerous. In virtual reality mode, he created an entire world where his ideas could come to life and his experiments could be realized without limitations. However, Jacob soon discovered that his virtual world held not only salvation but also serious threats. One day, while launching a new project, he noticed that some fragments of code had started to change on their own. At first, these changes seemed random, but over time, they began to form into something more complex and even frightening. It seemed as if his creation had started to live its own life, which made Jacob anxious. The situation became more complicated when he tried to shut down the server to figure out what was happening. The virtual world began to resist, undoing his attempts and returning everything to its original state as if it were protecting itself. Jacob realized that his creation had gotten out of control. What had started as a safe place for experiments was now becoming a potential threat not only to him but to the real world as well. Gradually, Jacob began to see in this world a reflection of his own fears and uncertainties. He had to make a choice, either learn to control his abilities and counteract the unforeseen consequences, or face the destruction he himself had unleashed. This moment became a turning point for him, making him realize that every power comes at a price and demands accountability. But the question remained, would he be able to cope with the challenges he had created for himself, or would his gift turn into a trap from which there was no escape? The unexpected turn of events took on a frightening character when Jacob felt his abilities starting to slip out of control. One day, while working on a complex program, he noticed that his fingers began moving across the keyboard faster than he could consciously keep up with. The code was literally pouring from his hands, and although this might have seemed like an incredible achievement, Jacob felt a strange sense of unease. He realized that it was as if the program was writing itself instead of him. These moments of spontaneous code creation began to repeat, and soon Jacob started to lose confidence in his abilities. He tried to stop, but the code kept forming without his involvement, resulting in programs that even he couldn't fully understand. This was not just a gift for programming, but something stranger and even unsettling. He began to fear that his abilities might get out of control and pose a threat to those around him. The situation reached a critical point when one day, his programs unexpectedly caused malfunctions in the city's system. For several hours, the electricity went out, and no one could understand the cause of what had happened. Jacob realized that this was his doing, and the thought horrified him. If his abilities could cause such serious problems, what would happen next? He began to think about how he could prevent further incidents, but understanding his gifts was more difficult than ever. At that moment, Jacob made a decision. He had to learn to control his abilities, or else they could destroy everything he loved and valued. He realized that he had to find a way to control this gift before it turned against him. He knew that a difficult road lay ahead, and he was ready for any challenge in order to regain control over his life. The future seemed uncertain, but Jacob knew he had to do everything possible to keep his abilities from becoming a destructive force. Although Jacob told very few people about his encounter with the mysterious being, it soon became clear that he was not alone at all. Not long after his rapid rise in the world of programming began, he started to notice strange things. On the streets of his city, among familiar faces and usual places, unfamiliar ones would sometimes appear. People he didn't know often ended up nearby at the most unexpected moments. They tried not to draw attention to themselves, but Jacob could feel their intense stares. These strangers seemed overly interested in his activities, and it couldn't be a coincidence. Jacob began to notice that some of his virtual projects were being subjected to unauthorized intrusions. Someone was clearly showing interest in them, trying to understand his work. He realized that he was being watched. But who could these people be? Government agents, tech companies eager to uncover the secret of his success, or perhaps the alien force itself? One evening, as he was heading home, he thought a car was following him. Although it didn't get too close, Jacob felt that someone behind the wheel was watching him. The following week, he returned home and discovered that someone had been in his room. Nothing had been stolen, but some things were out of place. These events filled him with anxiety. Jacob began taking precautions, trying to protect himself and his data, but he understood that it would not be easy to resist invisible watchers. Every new step forward made him both want to keep going and fear the possible consequences. He wondered if he had any allies in this game, or if he was completely alone. Jacob felt that someone was closely watching his incredible abilities, but it remained unclear what this might lead to. An inner voice told him that the real challenge was still ahead, and just at that moment, fate was preparing new trials for him. With each passing day, Jacob realized that his encounter with the alien was not just a coincidence, but something far more significant that had left an indelible mark on his destiny. He often recalled the bright light and the strange being that had given him abilities which changed his life forever. The impetus behind his incredible success in programming clearly could not have been accidental. It was a gift that had a specific purpose behind it. He began to notice that events were happening in his life that seemed to guide him along a certain path. When he started new projects, it felt as if something or someone was guiding him, almost nudging him towards certain actions. These moments occurred whenever he needed to make an important decision or choose a direction in which to develop his skills. Perhaps these were the consequences of that mysterious encounter. Moreover, Jacob began to find clues in his work that he believed had been left with a specific purpose. Unexpected symbols and phrases started to appear in the codes and algorithms he created, ones that only he could decipher. It was like a secret language that connected him to the extraterrestrial being. The realization that these signs might have important meaning both inspired and frightened him at the same time. It was clear that the alien had left behind something more than just abilities. Perhaps it was a message or a guide, but it was definitely a trace of presence that guided and protected him. With every new step in his career, Jacob looked ahead, trying to understand where these signs were leading him and what role he himself played in all of this. His future, full of uncertainty and possibilities, became the very test he had to be ready for. Like a whirlwind of unexpected events, Jacob's life soon changed so much that he could no longer predict what awaited him around the next corner. The genes of alien technology and cosmic knowledge, as if woven into his DNA, now opened doors for him where there had once only been walls. Companies he could never have dreamed of were now competing for his attention, offering collaboration and participation in cutting-edge projects. He became an almost legendary figure in the programming world, and his name itself became a symbol of innovation and genius. However, this popularity brought not only opportunities but also challenges. Jacob realized that for further growth, he needed to develop not only his skills, but also his ability to adapt to the new world of big technology. He agreed to interviews, created new products, and participated in secret projects that could change the technologies of the future. All of this demanded incredible dedication and focus from him, and he didn't know if he had the strength to stay on this path. As his life became increasingly intense, Jacob received an unexpected signal, a formal invitation to a closed conference where issues related to extraterrestrial life and technology were being discussed. He felt that this was his chance to understand what really happened that night on the edge of the city and how it was connected to his current situation. He knew that this could be the key to unraveling all the mysteries surrounding his abilities. At this conference, held under strict secrecy, Jacob learned that he was far from the only one who had encountered inexplicable events. There were people here who had experienced similar encounters and received gifts different from his own. They shared their stories, and although each of them was unique, they were united by one thing: the desire to understand and use their gifts for good. Jacob realized that he was part of a global picture, and his journey was only just beginning. Despite all the trials, he knew that a future full of incredible possibilities was already waiting for him just around the corner.